Hello and welcome to all learners and listeners. Thank you for tuning into Uttarakhand Open University's Community Radio Hello Haldwani at the frequency of 91.2 FM. I am Niyati Rawat from the Department of Political Science, and our today's talk is in continuation of the ongoing series on the evolution of Indian Constitution leading up to Constitution Day that is celebrated on the 26th of November. In today's talk, we contemplate the contributions made by the women members of the Constituent Assembly in the framing of Indian Constitution. By this time, you already know that it was the Constituent Assembly that was assigned the mammoth task to draft the Constitution for a highly diverse, caste-ridden, unequal and feudal society with communal undertones. This was the reality of our society under the British colonial government. This Constituent Assembly was formed after the Cabinet Mission Plan in 1946, and it initially had 389 members. Out of these, 15 were women. It may appear as a very insignificant number to some of you, but these women made an everlasting impact through their contribution. You may have heard of the term founding fathers, that is referred to the leaders responsible for drafting the American Constitution, but not in the case of Indian Constitution, because 15 exceptional women marked their presence through their revolutionary voices in the Constituent Assembly. These women fought in the national freedom movement. They influenced India's emerging women's movement around that time and participated in framing of our Constitution. Their names are Annie Mascarene, Sucheta Kriplani, Hansa Mehta, Vijay Lakshmi Pandit, Ammu Swaminathan, Dakshayani Velayudan, Begum Aizaz Rasool, Durga Bai Deshmukh, Malti Chaudhary, Kamla Chaudhary, Leela Roy, Renuka Ray, Purnima Banerjee, Rajkumari Amrit Kaur, and Sarojini Naidu. All of them came from diverse backgrounds and navigated their political careers from numerous challenges. In their personal and professional lives, they faced patriarchy and sexism. There existed gender biases in the society, and even the societal expectations from women and men were vastly different. They were economically dependent on their male counterparts, and child marriage and early motherhood was also a reality. There was stigma around widowhood around that time, and caste discrimination created an intersection of discrimination between gender and caste. With this background, women members of the Constituent Assembly brought with them new insights through their diverse backgrounds and experiences. One such member was Dakshayani Velayudan. She was a Gandhian from Cochin and was the only Dalit woman in the Constituent Assembly. Throughout her life, she was subjected to caste-based discrimination, but in future she went on to gain education and later took part in the freedom struggle. Despite coming out of a backward community, she advocated against separate electorates for backward castes, as she believed that it could lead to their seclusion and alienation. She also was in favor of safeguards for minority and scheduled castes, but believed that excessive focus on it could create division within the larger Hindu community. She saw reservations and separate electorates as a short-sighted solution, and advocated for economic independence, for the upliftment and true liberation of the marginalized. Another remarkable member of the Constituent Assembly was Hansa Mehta. She was born in Gujarat and went on to become the first female Vice-Chancellor of any university in India. In 1937, she contested elections in Bombay Legislative Council, where she refused to contest from a reserved seat and won the election. As a member of several committees in the Constituent Assembly, including the Advisory Committee on Fundamental Rights, Hansa Mehta was against too many personal laws and advocated for a progressive common civil code. So, she spoke in favor of uniform civil code in the Constituent Assembly, as it would provide certain civil rights to women and lead to women's upliftment in our patriarchal society. She was a champion of gender equality, and in the United Nations Human Rights Charter, she pushed for the change in the phrase "all men are born free and equal" to "all human beings are born free and equal." Hansa Mehta was the vice chair of the UN United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights Committee. During the debates around Hindu Code Bill, she argued in favor of the equal rights for both sons and daughters in fathers' inheritance. Another point I would like to make is that Hansa Mehta also drafted the Indian Women's Charter of Rights and Duties, demanding gender equality and civil rights for women. Moving on to Begum Aizaz Rasool. She emphasized on strengthening fundamental rights in the Constitution and held that adding so many reasonable restrictions to fundamental rights further weakens the scope and limits our liberty. She questioned what was the use of giving so many fundamental rights to us if so many restrictions too were added to them. Another important argument she made was in the discussions around national language. She was against the use of Shuddh Sanskritized Hindi that majority of the Indians did not understand. Instead of Shuddh Sanskritized Hindi, she was in favor of Hindustani language that was a kind of a mix of Urdu and Hindi and was commonly understood by the locals. You can read more about her in her autobiography, From Parda to Parliament, a Muslim Woman in Indian Politics. Let's move on to another inspirational woman in the Constituent Assembly, Durgabai Deshmukh. She was known as the Iron Lady. She was a freedom fighter, a Gandhian, a social worker, and later a criminal lawyer in the Madras High Court. She had a child marriage at the mere age of 8, but after gaining maturity, she refused to live with her partner, and this decision was supported by her father and her brother. She was a member of the Constituent Assembly and later on of the Planning Commission of India. As a member of the Drafting Committee of the Constituent Assembly, just like Begum Aizaz Rasool, Deshmukh too opposed the imposition of pure Hindi as it could lead to sidelining of other state languages. With her legal background, Durgabai Deshmukh weighed in on the judicial matters in the Constituent Assembly. She also led the amendment to the draft constitution in lowering the age from 35 to 30 for holding a seat in the Council of States. She further made key interventions on numerous important issues like national language, judicial independence, and human trafficking. Dear friends, we've come to the end of today's radio talk where we briefly covered the contributions made by some of the exceptional women members of the Constituent Assembly, hoping we continue to be inspired by them and never forget their role in shaping our Constitution and strengthening India's democracy. Thank you very much.